When I was in fourth grade, we used to tell horror stories after school until the parents started complaining. Apparently, one of the kids went home crying after hearing this one. Looking back, I have a better vocabulary now than I did then, so I'll retell it with a little polish. There was a girl who had just left home for college, heading to a university across the state. Her small-town upbringing made the transition difficult, but she was determined. She lived in a towering high-rise, a few floors below the rooftop, in a private school funded by some eccentric billionaire. Most students lived in the same building, floors stacked high above one another. The constant buzz of elevators and chatter filled the air. She got along well with her roommate, who had moved in first and claimed the bed by the window. The girl didn't argue, even though she would have preferred sleeping away from the door. She had always disliked doors. In the fields, back home the wind would rattle the screen, and as a child, she imagined footsteps in the night. Determined to excel in her studies, she avoided parties and distractions. The whispers of other students calling her odd didn't bother her. She was used to being different. As October rolled in, she devoted herself to preparing for an important exam, spending late nights in the library. She always made it back to her dorm by 2 a.m., careful not to wake her roommate. One night, as she studied, a young man sat nearby, a small portable radio buzzing with static-filled news about a crime in a neighboring county. She asked him to turn it off, needing silence to focus, and he obliged. As time passed, she checked her watch, 2 a.m., but something felt off. Normally, she left the library feeling accomplished, but that night, an unease lingered. She decided to take a short break, head back to her dorm to grab a book she had left behind. On her way, she passed a jogger walking their dog. Strange, she thought. Who jogs at this hour? But the thought quickly shifted to memories of her own dog back home, snuggled up with her sister, likely forgetting all about her. The cold October air bit at her skin as she reached the high-rise, stepped into the elevator and pressed the button for her floor. The elevator's doors closed like jaws around her, whisking her up. When she arrived, the hallway was silent. Careful not to disturb her roommate, she unlocked the door and stepped inside. The room was dark, and she instinctively reached for the light switch before catching herself. No need to wake her. Quietly, she fumbled in the dim light, found her book, and slipped back out, gently closing the door behind her. The next morning, she woke up in the library, her cheek imprinted with the pages of her textbook. She couldn't remember falling asleep, but the embarrassed glances from the librarians told her it had been a while. She gathered her things and made her way back to the high-rise, only to find the building swarming with police cars, emergency vehicles, and reporters. A crowd of students murmured in worried voices. "What happened? I heard someone was murdered. They won't let anyone upstairs." Pushing through the chaos, she managed to slip inside. The lobby was tense, filled with officers questioning students and faculty. No one stopped her as she stepped into the elevator. When the doors opened on her floor, the hallway was eerily quiet. Most dorm rooms stood open, signs of hurried exits, wet footprints on the carpet, half-worn outfits on beds, the scent of abandoned breakfasts lingering in the air. Her own door, however, was shut, marked with thick yellow police tape in an X. Two officers stood nearby, deep in discussion. Heart-pounding, she stepped forward. "You can't go in there," one officer said, blocking her path. But she pushed past, tearing through the tape, ignoring their shouts. Inside, the morning light spilled through the window, illuminating the horror before her. Her roommate lay sprawled on the bed, disemboweled, her organs glistening, her lifeless eyes staring into nothing. Her throat had been slashed, her scalp torn, hair strewn across the sheets. Deep bruises covered her thighs, her mutilated body a grotesque display of violence. The girl's stomach lurched, and she doubled over, vomiting. Shaking, she wiped her mouth, forcing herself to look up, only to see something even more horrifying. Scrawled. Across the wall in smeared blood were the words,